knowledge. She wasn't able to come. She said she might pop in if she has time, but just so Nadine can see afterward if that's okay. All right, so that was the ask. And what were the results? I had a week. So the results were that I was able to do the program-based curriculum framework. It's completed for both institutions, so you won't actually have to do much unless you want to change it and customize it. So I was able to build the curriculum framework that could be uploaded into Brightspace if you wanted to. You may choose to customize it and change the coding a bit, but that's up to you. Then you just have to kind of change the document that I have. And so the curriculum framework is based on the learning outcomes and the courses that each institution gave me. I also was able to map all program courses and learning outcomes in the 2 programs. So that's been completed. I'm not saying it's correct because it was the mapping as per Shelley's, no subject matter expert, helping and supporting, but I just wanted to go through. If I was doing this with a faculty working group, what I would do is probably the same process. I would do it first and then let them edit it so that I'm using a good, using their time more efficiently, and we'd have a place to start. So I did the mapping. You can see all of the courses and learning outcomes for both programs are now in an Excel sheet, and I'll show you this in a bit more detail. Tina?
If we have questions, do you mind if we ask as you go?
Not at all.
So did you say that you, and that this might have been just me not hearing it right, did you say if you had a faculty to, normally you would have a faculty review that just before you went to the next step? Is that correct?
Yeah, these
just
would have
confirm.
to be correct.
Okay.
The reason it's so important to have these accurate is I'm only going on the terminology.
Right.
Right? I can only map with terminology, and one of the lucky things is I've taught a lot of these courses in the past.
Right.
But I have not taught, obviously, the Holland College courses. So a lot of the intricacies, sometimes it's hard to figure out. So a faculty could confirm. So I would have all of this confirmed by faculty just to make sure it was right.
Okay.
So those pieces were completed. I did notice that there's a 500-hour difference in the programming between Holland College and Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia has 500 extra hours in their diploma. The biggest reason for that is that they have an articulation agreement with a 2+2. So they are able to go into the 3rd year of a university program. So there's a lot of theory-based courses put in there that don't align to the early childhood competency charts, frameworks, specifically, like developmental psychology. Pieces of it might, but they were kind of also clicking off the courses that a first-year student would have for theory, like Intro to Psych, Intro to Soc, and I pulled those out of the mapping because they don't align to early childhood. There were more of credits being granted so that the students could more easily transition into a 3rd year where they didn't have that Intro to Psych and Intro to Soc and stuff like that. So NSCC backfilled to make sure the students had the same type of foundation going into their 3rd year as the students in the degree program.
So is the 500-hour difference those courses? The majority of them are those courses. So when you take those out, they're pretty much the same?
Yeah. Okay. Very similar. Although I did see a difference in the content's similar, but the way your courses are organized are a little different. Like, for example, it would have been Holland College kind of does things more as an age group. That's just their packaging in courses, right? Age group, like prenatal through toddler is a course, and curriculum 1, 2, 3, 4 is a course, where NSCC does things more topic-based. And like aesthetics and creativity is a course. Right. And observing and recording is a course. So it was a little kind of hard to map because NSCC does more topics and Holland College did more age group or criteria that's blended together. So I'm glad I had the learning outcomes and objectives for both. Although if we were writing them from scratch from the beginning, I think we would have had a little easier time. And NSCC does have a little different methodology, even though both institutions are using learning outcomes. There's a bit difference in the standards and things like that. So the next thing that I did was go through and I did the course and learning outcome for a PLAR rubric. So for the health, safety, and nutrition course, which is a Holland College course, I kind of then pulled that out and showed what a rubric would look like, so that if a student was looking at it, how they could, I turned them into demonstration tasks and then gave you examples of how a student could approve them. And I'll zoom in and we'll go through this in a detail. I'm still doing the big picture. Then I did a process document, which is complete, which Tina has seen. I didn't send this to Maria, but I will. The process document is just giving step-by-step on how you could build this with using faculty and instructional designers and things like that. Just ideas, and I'll go into that as well. All right, so let's look first at the curriculum framework. So the curriculum framework can be set up in Brightspace using the learning outcomes. And it's important for those of you who didn't see the first presentation, that we were looking at building a course, a PLAR course for the early childhood diploma. So a student who was looking to PLAR a large portion of the diploma would be enrolled into the course, and they would then, there'd be some nice instructions, maybe some examples, maybe some instructions on how to do a video, how to prepare a document, how to annotate the document to explain. I would make sure that we had all of those instructions, and those are things that we can share because we're both using Brightspace. Those instructional pieces is something that we can definitely share between the institutions and the front end pieces. And then all of the curriculum, which I now have finished, the frameworks with all of your outcomes, then you get uploaded into Brightspace. I have it built in an Excel sheet that you could have a look at, tweak, and then upload so that all of your curriculum could now be in that course. A student wanting a PLAR credit would be enrolled. They'd have access to all the criteria. And if they're only interested in one or two specific courses, or they want to just focus on level 1 or level 2, I also had shown previously how you can customize the student's experience using a quiz. So I'm not going to show that today, but I have another video that I can send out if you want to look at how a student can, it could be very overwhelming for a student to log in and see hundreds of learning outcomes. So the quiz would ask them questions and then just personalize what courses or level that they want to work towards. And that's very simple to set up. Tina? Oh, you're on mute.
Thanks. Level 1 and level 2. So ours are different, are they not? So when you refer to level 1 on Holland College's document, is their level 1, and on ours it would be our level 1 or our level 2?
I did not put the levels in because they are unique. Okay. The way it would work in Brightspace is you put all of the learning outcomes, and we're sticking with course-based.
Yes,
right?
Okay, good.
We're going to stay course-based because it's easier to then merge it over into your student information system, PeopleSoft or NSCC. I'm not sure what Holland College uses, right. But it's easier to transfer if you stick with learning outcomes and outcomes. Okay. What your instructional designer would do in the back end is then come up with the formulas. So if you wanted to do a badge for level 1, or if you wanted to give an award for level 1, you would say these 10 criteria or learning outcomes are aligned to. So they do that programming in the back end. Okay. That's not done because everyone's going to have something unique.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the curriculum framework. So the mapping. So this is the mapping. Every course for both diplomas has been added, and I gave it a code. So anything with an H in front of it is Holland College, anything with an N, and I will give you these slides, and all of my notes are actually written in the notes section with all the explanations and things like that, so you'll have all of this information. So this is what the map looks like. Every course has been added. They're not in any particular order. I think they went in there alphabetically. And then I just assigned course 1, 1.0, course 2, 2.0, with the course code, so that way, if a student gets has achieved a course, and you print out their progress report, either through the portfolio or just looking at the student's progress, you'll see the codes that they've achieved, but I also put the course number, so that way it doesn't mess things up for your registrars, because I've been in that world before. It's going to be a nightmare. So all of the mapping stays course-based, even though we're using unique codes. So if it's a whole course, it's a 1.0, 2.0. If it's a learning outcome, it's a 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, depending on which learning outcome it is. So a student can, if they have a lot of experience in one area, they can try and demonstrate a whole course, or they can just do learning outcome per learning outcome. And then each institution can then determine, I didn't put the calculations in because none of this is in Brightspace. So NSCC might decide, okay, well, if a student achieves 4 of the 6 learning outcomes Tina had mentioned in a prior meeting, I would probably do a learning contract. Then that would be your process, where maybe Holland College decides, well, if you've achieved 4 of the 6, maybe I'm going to give you the credit. That's totally up to you. And again, your instructional designer knows how to do those formulas. They'd have to work with your faculty, of course, but that kind of thing happens in your competency framework. So let's just take another closer look. So this is one course. So the code for this is an NSCC course, Family Studies. So if you see the code N6.0, and then I put the code number, and I listed all of the learning outcomes. So, and then the mapping is in green. So Holland College course 3, or learning outcome 3.1 maps to the very first one. So there is a mapping for this course. Anything in yellow is theory-based. Anything in white is practical. So the reason I found it very important to differentiate between the two, there sometimes is overlap, absolutely. Sometimes a practical can be done through a theory, like a written explanation. But it's good to differentiate that when you're talking PLAR, because then you know if it's a practical, you're probably going to get a video, or you're probably going to get something. If it's all theory, it's very hard for a student to necessarily upload a video proving how they know theory. It's probably going to be a document, or they might have to do maybe a little quiz or something else, depending on what you decide. So that's just a close-up. And if we go into another close-up, this is how the coding works. So the number 1, the code across the top, like I said, it's the curriculum course code in D2L. So in D2L, that course is always going to have the same code. So an NS 6.0 is equivalent to ECPS 1010. And if there was a mapping criteria that mapped to Holland College, it's in the green, the 2, and those are the learning outcomes that align. If there was a number in the 3 box, number 3 box, that means it was a course per course mapping. So this course maps to this course directly. This one didn't have a direct map. There were only a few of them that I could actually map course to course. But when you get your chart, you'll see that. And again, you'll have all of these instructions. And number 4 is the curriculum learning outcome code in D2L. So each learning outcome, that's the code. So these are the codes that would be entered into D2L for each learning outcome. So if you build your rubrics based on learning outcomes and a student uploads a document to prove that they are able to collaborate with the community and early childhood sector, they'd then be awarded it as soon as the faculty said, yep, that document works as a demonstration of learning. Number 5 is just outlining that yellow is theory and white is practical. And there's always exceptions. When I started diving deeper into it and building the rubrics, I was like, actually that could kind of be a theory or a practical if you were really creative, but just generally based on the Bloom's taxonomy, you know, the verb at the front. Okay, so here's an example of a Holland College course where we have again no course per course, and I also put a non-applicable in any learning outcomes that I couldn't find. And again, explore the grieving process. If I actually talked to somebody who was a subject matter expert at NSCC, I'm sure they probably have that somewhere, but I couldn't find it. So, but they may have it somewhere that they teach it in context of something else. So therefore, anything that I couldn't figure out, I put a not applicable. And you can see the second example, directed guidance, I was able to find a direct course. So the course code, Nova Scotia Community College, their 17th course is a direct correlation to the direct guidance course. So there's a course per course connection with those. So that's the actual mapping that I did, and I will send you the maps. But as you could tell, it needed a lot of explanation before you seen all of this. I only had a week, so there'll probably be mistakes. So the next thing I did was then I decided, okay, I'm going to pull out a course and see how easy or difficult it was to build a PLAR rubric, because when I'm teaching in D2L, I love the rubrics. So you pull up the document. If you remember one of the videos that I produced, and I can resend it if you want, you can pull up the document in Brightspace, and the rubric is right beside it. So you can see both things at the same time. And these rubrics are connected in the back end. So if a check mark happens for learning outcome number 1, under the criteria, then the student will then be awarded that learning outcome until they have all of them achieved. And then what you can do in the back end is say if they've achieved learning outcome 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, then that equals a badge or an award for the course. So let's look at this a little closer. So this is a different course, but the same format. This is an NSCC course. So what, is this an NSCC? Yes, it is. So this is their 3.0. So the course learning outcomes at the top, there are 2 learning outcomes, LANA, that are not demonstratable. So you can fix those. They were part of those professional rubrics, those professional standards rubrics. So you can do with that what you choose. But the rest are there. So the other 4, there's 6 learning outcomes in this course. But I reworded the outcomes so that they're demonstratable. So the first one is research and respond to current issues and trends. So in the criteria, demonstrate how you have researched issues and trends concerning families, communities, early child learning, and childcare profession. And under level 1 approved, I provided some examples like a work sample, a new sample, submit a presentation, video, slides of your sample, or choose your own way to show what you know. And if you do that, then you're achieving 3.1. So in an example like that, a student could show that they've researched, maybe did a project on multiculturalism and did bulletin board in the daycare or center, and they've researched it and they've pulled together a really nice presentation for the daycare center for everyone, and they're taking pictures, they're doing a little PowerPoint, and then they do a little screencast video, or they can, in Brightspace, they can do a video, they can do an audio clip explaining, I achieved this learning outcome. And I do have examples of how I would do that. But again, that's in your front end piece where you teach students how to provide samples. And the next one is demonstrate you can effectively communicate with families, peers, and professionals. And then the example is letters from your employer, a video sample of your communication skills, or outline how you've demonstrated this at work and have it signed off by your employer, peer, or community member, or choose your own way of demonstrating this skill. And then they'd have that achievement. Rubrics are connected to the curriculum framework, it's tracked. And all of these level 1 examples are universally designed. So I was intentionally trying to make sure that somebody could explain how they've demonstrated it with a documented proof, so that it's also inclusive of different learning styles and abilities. And Brightspace, as we know, has the ability to record audio, video, all of those things. So I know I've shown you this before, but we also do have the students have access to the Pulse app, where they can be in the workplace documenting using their phone, grabbing bulletin boards, grabbing documents that they've created. They could be grabbing plans and doing this with their phone, and the course would be accessible on their phone. You can see rubrics on the phone. You can, all of this can be done in a really mobile format for people in the workplace. And I just wanted to remind you of that because it's a really important piece for students. A lot of them might not have a laptop. And the Brightspace at Pulse app is a really neat tool that I think is undervalued. I use, when I have my students set up on Pulse, it's a work, what's that format called, Lana? ALP, Tina, where students work at their own pace.
Oh, ISI.
There you go. When you can actually set up with some pushes. So in it, every 2 weeks, don't forget, you should start uploading something. And you can also push things out to a cohort using the Pulse app. So that's good too.
Shelley?
Yeah.
Is there any privacy issues with using the videoing at work in a daycare? Like, is there something that we could, or is this something that we talk about later probably, is how we determine once this is approved, it's all deleted? And
so what I do, I teach in early childhood at a community college, and my students do this. And when they first of all, they aren't to use kids in their videos. And if they do, I have a form where the parents have to sign, granting permission.
Okay.
And it is in a secured format, so it's not going on a website, right? It's password protected. So that is the piece and it's for educational purposes.
Okay.
So other than that, you'd have to check with your institution, but the courses I teach are with Grand Prairie Community College, and they don't have a problem with that, as long as the parents have signed off. And very rarely will the students put a kid in. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I get them to put little emojis over top of the kids' faces. Or black them out. It's not hard to do anymore. You
No.
can do that with your phone now. So there are workarounds, and again, that's your front end piece that you kind of build,
Yeah.
right? All of those instructions in, and make it really simple to use, or as simple as possible.
Okay.
So that's the assessment and evaluation. If you, there's always the theory pieces where if I was doing a course like the family, where it's a lot of theory, maybe you want to build, and it's up to which courses you want to PLAR. It's totally up to the different institutions. But if it was me, I would make a course like that PLARable, and I would build, if there's 5 learning outcomes, I would build 5 little quizzes, and with a reference to where they can re-prep themselves with some information before they take the quiz, just to refresh themselves, and then see if they pass the quiz. And you can give them maybe 3 times or 0 or just once, since it's a PLAR. I don't know. It's up to you guys how that stuff happens. But you can also build those in, and you can take the quizzes or the test questions from your current courses. And if it's in Brightspace, you just move them over, right? So those are options, but that's capacity building. You can't do that the first year. You kind of build those over time, I think.
Okay.
If you find that you have capacity to build some test banks, that's how I would do it. So as I mentioned before, PLAR can be personalized with your leveling and your courses, and I can do a deeper dive into that if you want to look at it. Again, it's set up in that Brightspace D2L folks actually set up us a working sample of how that personalization can happen. So if you want to see that again, just let me know. I know we're going to run out of time, so I didn't want to go over that again. The innovations are all in Brightspace. So you'd need an instructional designer to work on the competency framework and all of your calculations, and determining how many learning outcomes somebody needs for a course. Do they need all of them? At what level standard? You'd also need an instructional designer and a subject matter experts to build out the rubrics. If the faculty build the rubrics in Excel, it's much easier for the instructional designer than just to kind of upload. And also any quizzes or tests that you choose to do for some of the courses. And then, of course, you need a curriculum person to also support the mapping and any tweaking of learning outcomes, because sometimes you find problems with learning outcomes. Like, wait a minute, I actually can't measure that one. So then we get into the planning phase. So what I did was I built the steps. So there's 6 steps that I could think of. You probably would take, if you decided to go with this, you probably would, I'll give you this document as well. You could probably customize it any way you want and change the roles, change the steps, all of those kinds of things, because an instructional designer might do something very different at one institution versus the other. And again, I've been an NSCC employee, so it's kind of based on that. So if we look at step 1 and 2, and Maria, you will appreciate the design principles and the innovations, because those are kind of FSC terminology, because Maria's college is part of a research project. These are pieces that she would need. Tina, you probably don't need these. But Andrew would like them for his agriculture project. So I left them in there. But really, you're just looking at the steps in the middle. So you would determine the target credential, which credential you're doing. Are you doing the full program? Like I suggested to Tina, where maybe she just wants to do a level 1 and then a level 2, because not everybody might want to do the university degree, because they're still meeting the criteria to be an early childhood educator. But again, you have to determine what it is. Are you doing a customized credential, or are you doing the full diploma? Then you also at step 1 have to figure out how you're setting up your personalization. If you're going to do the level 1 and the level 2, or are you going to have students answer questions to just pull out a couple of courses at a time? that's when you start doing your quiz. So that the instructional designer can set up the quiz questions to target certain learning outcomes in the back. And then you should be beta testing while the rest of the people start jumping into step 2, which is aligning your outcomes and objectives, which is the piece that I've just did, which is your Excel sheet, where you're putting all of your learning outcomes, you're coding them, you're highlighting what's PLARable and what's not. I know Tina had mentioned previously that there were some courses that people were not allowed to PLAR and some that were, so you want to take those out or you want to remove them somehow. You want to remove any excess language, and you want to make sure everything's working and everyone agrees. Before that Excel sheet gets into Brightspace, you want to make sure everybody understands, make sure your registrar has a look at it, make sure everyone has a look at it, especially if Brightspace talks to your student information system. So then we look at step 3 is, oh, I should change that to curriculum framework because this is not competency based. You enter all the information into Brightspace, you upload your framework in, you determine, and then you start after you get your framework in, then you put your milestones or your badges or your awards or whatever piece you're going to have. And you don't have to use those, but it's a nice option to have in the back end. Then you create the opportunities, so you can also then expand on your rubrics, which courses are going to be, maybe you have some test banks. Oh, this is an easy one. Let's just add this test bank in, and then they can also do a theory-based course as well. So then you start actually building out your opportunities and your rubrics on how students are going to demonstrate. And maybe some of your faculty have some great samples that they can add for students to do. And I would still keep it all in an Excel sheet and have it all linked there. And then you just hand all that stuff over to an instructional designer, and then they can just make the magic happen. The next step would be to build your PLAR course shell. You would have a quality checklist to make sure all the material being entered in are UDL, culturally relevant, plain languaged, all of that kind of stuff. And I have some checklists if you ever want them that I use. I would have an introduction to Brightspace and an introduction to PLAR demonstrations as your welcome module. And those are pieces that you could collaborate on, and you can repurpose those pieces for every program. So it's not something that is a waste of time. Doing that piece well, and that instructional designers are brilliant at that stuff. That's their gift, is building those pieces in the front and all of those cool technology samples. Oh, I'm supposed to be on this slide. What else do I have? Program-specific information, placement quiz, standardized instructions and organized by topic or learning outcomes, create any assignments. And when I say assignments, those would be your rubrics. So in Brightspace, you just put an assignment in, and that's what they're demonstrating, right? That's what they're submitting as an assignment for grading. And then slowly replace things with self-directed activities would be what I would say to do after that. Is so you build it all out with students have uploading demonstrations, but I would also try and build some self-directed activities like the quizzes and things like that, so that they could be automatically granted some learning outcomes once you get capacity to build those. And then I would put in a continuous improvement plan, how to evaluate it, make sure there's some student satisfaction criteria built in. You can also pull up all of your analytics in Brightspace to see which pieces people are clicking on the most, what instructions aren't clear. Instructional designers know all that stuff. Building more training videos for students on how to do things. And again, those are things that can be shared and used across many programs. Reviewing the content with employer groups to get more ideas of what happens in the workplace. What would, oh, but we actually do this in the workplace. This would be a great example. If we actually do menus that are month in the nutrition course, why don't you just allow them to use this menu that the staff would be creating and things like that? So I would actually share it with some employer groups, because I think that people who are actually working in the daycare centers would have some great ideas of what demonstrations of learnings could be equivalent. And then, of course, share the results with other colleges. Because that's my plug. And I'll stop talking now. I have 13 minutes left.
Wow. Even though that was complicated, you make it look so easy. Wow. We need an instructional designer in this meeting. Yeah.
Lana was one in a past life. Lana, what are you thinking?
I know.
Both sides of the coin.
I like to consider myself still an instructional designer, but I'm woefully out of practice looking at what you just did. So yes, I do agree that we do need an active instructional designer in here. I think it's amazing, especially that you did that in a week. Like that would take me like months to do that. So
I'll send it to you, Lana. Just throw your name on it. No one will know.
That's what I'll do. Yeah, that's a good idea, Shelley. Thanks. Yeah, I could do that. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Because there's just so much here.
I love that I'm seeing collaboration where I didn't before. I see lots of places where we can work together on this.
Oh, for sure. I definitely see that.
Not as many learning outcomes as I thought, because of the language that's used and the way it's organized, but there's other places.
Yeah.
Mary Lou?
Thank you, Shelley. That is amazing. And pardon me if I missed it or whatever, because it's huge, and it's sort of sometimes I have to go back through documents like that to kind of like really find my way through them. But that was an amazing tour and an amazing set of documents. So here's my question. My understanding is that NSCC has a set of program level outcomes for each program, and so did you use the program level outcomes here in this exercise? No, I didn't just miss it. Okay, and map that. And
no,
okay,
I mapped outcome to outcome.
Outcome to outcome within the individual courses.
Yes.
Okay.
Program outcomes, if Holland College had program outcomes to NSCCs, I bet you they would map much easier, but you can't demonstrate them that way. Well, you could, I guess, but you wouldn't have enough detail.
Yeah, well, that's where my question is going. Here we have been contacted by somewhere around 10 or a dozen folks in early childhood and in a few other programs, people with significant work experience in their field, and they are looking for a diploma. Basically, they're not looking for us to print them a free diploma or anything. They're going to go through the process. That's a given. But I guess I've been thinking, or we've been talking here about, would that be easier if we were evaluating their evidence, asking for evidence and evaluating their evidence at a program outcome level?
Wow.
Rather than course by course by course by course. I don't know. I have no idea if it's possible. What would it take to do? Do you guys do that? And I also want to admit that I realize I've overlapped my communications with with NSCC, and I have a meeting with Jennifer Archer on July 6th to talk about program level outcomes. So I'm really like benefiting from what you guys are able to do and share.
Well, Lana and I both have reported to Jennifer for however many years, and we actually would have both drafted the instructions on building program outcomes and all of those kinds of things. So I'm meeting with Jennifer on Friday because I keep connecting just because she's has a wealth of knowledge in all of these areas.
Right.
So if an institution would allow it, it can be done using a very similar format. It would just be, I think I'd need industry consultation more than faculty consultation. So the way I would do something like that, and I'm just brainstorming as I'm talking, is a very similar building the Excel sheet with the program outcomes. Then I would pull out the criteria, like courses don't matter, right? So I would still take all of your learning outcomes and I would map them to the program outcomes and eliminate the courses are like the packaging, right? Mm-hmm. They're the pretty wrapping paper, but we really want what's inside. So I would take all of my program outcomes and I put my learning outcomes there, and I would meet with industry and I would get them to brainstorm. How could we prove this? And get them to come up with some really cool ideas. In the workplace, they do this, this, and this. Maybe those 4 things could map to that program outcome. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And instead of your faculty could definitely help, but I think industry would be more important because faculty kind of are in the learning outcomes and objectives place and making sure I meet all of that criteria, where the employers are in they know what the demonstrations are going to look like. They know what the daily work is like in the daycare centers or the home care centers, so they can give you better examples of a big picture. Okay. So I would do very similar, even with the rubrics.
Sure. Let's see if you have this party trick. How would you fill the gaps? So let's say someone goes through, like we build that framework and somebody goes through that process and presents enough evidence to say, sure, you know, appropriately and adequately, satisfactorily, whatever your term is, have demonstrated that you've got 6 out of 10 program learning outcomes, and the four left over, they're mapped to various courses or packaging. And we're a course delivery institution as you are, so yeah. That's eluding me at the moment, except for an ILP, which is why I twigged when you guys talked about the ISI. I'm like,
Tina does a lot of that too, of the learning contracts and things like that in her role as academic chair, and she could probably talk to that. If I was designing that, that's, again, how critical it is to have employers right from the beginning, because first of all, they're the ones who are going to hire people coming from that. So they have to have the confidence in the process, right? If they're going to hire someone who has PLAR'd an entire program, they have to have confidence that the process is authentic. So if they have 6 of the 8 or 10 program outcomes achieved, then what you could do with the last 4 is, again, you've already had that exercise where everything's mapped, and maybe they're only in 2 courses. Plus, if you could actually, and again, I'm a techie person, so then I would build a Brightspace shell for each of the program outcomes, or the whole program in a shell, and do a similar process of the pieces that are missing. It would be a lot more work, and it's probably easier to do it on paper. Depending on the number of people you have coming through. Yeah. And
to build
Tina
the
IO. Explain how they do it, but you can do self-directed learning modules in Brightspace very easy.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't mean to hijack this meeting and talk about program level outcomes, but because realistically, I think we'll be dealing with course-based PLAR by and large. But yeah, just wanted to shoot in that question.
So cool.
It's an interesting idea, isn't it?
Isn't it lovely? Like, that would be so respectful of the student and the employers because they do have all this experience. It's just so hard to authenticate it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
And
there's got to be a way, I think.
Yeah.
There is, I'm sure. Oh, now I got something to do for the next week.
It'll be an interesting conversation with Jennifer too, because like what we were thinking is, the max you can PLAR is 75%. So we have to go to courses at some point. So it made sense to do it this approach rather than a program level comparison. But when you think about, I can appreciate how much work it would be, but when you think about if you could PLAR 50 or 75% of the program level outcomes, and the remaining ones were already mapped to courses, it could still work, but it is an additional
And both
piece.
NSCC and Holland College will have their entire program in Brightspace shells. So
Yeah.
you could then take the course level, and again, brainstorming, Lana, taking an online course and converting it to a self-directed. It's not as easy, but it can still be done. Like, so that you could take each course that you already have in a blended and create a self-directed version.
Yeah, and just put the learning outcomes that they still haven't met.
Yeah.
In there, or like they'd all be there. You just hide the ones you don't need, or whatever. I'm kind of still stuck back on the program level thing, because to me that would be much more sensible than course based. I would love to see us do that, but I understand why we want. But it would be so much easier.
Oh my God, wouldn't it?
Well,
So
really, I think that we have to.
It's worth the
As an
conversation.
institution, if we're really going to serve our learners, I think we have to be prepared to offer both.
Mm.
Yeah.
It would be a lot easier if we went program, for sure. It would be.
For some folks, but potentially not for others.
Yep. It depends on their level of experience.
Depends on their level and the depth of their experience. And
I got to pull up NSCC's program outcomes now. Do you guys have program outcomes?
We do. The problem with ours is, and I haven't looked at them lately, but it may be old.
Yeah.
Because our curriculum is under renewal this coming year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But that wouldn't be live until 22, 23. So changes. So far the changes.
Depends on when they were written. Let me just take a quick look. I can probably even tell you who wrote them.
Apparently, the ones we have now are the ones that were mapped directly to the provincial standards. So
actually, they're not bad.
Okay.
That's why they have not been changed yet, because we'd have to talk to the province about standards. So,
right. Okay, that's true.
And I'm just trying to find them too, but I think Charlie, you beat me to it, didn't you? You already found them, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting idea.
There we go. Oh, and ignore that first one.
Yeah. Let me go like this.
I just put through a request to remove all that not so nice language, and the very first one is one of them. So yeah, block that. Don't show that.
Yeah, that won't be in our curriculum document.
Now I'm so curious. What's
do you guys have program outcomes?
We do have them in it's almost a historical piece in some programs. And we've really just been through accreditation processes with a couple of programs, and the feedback from those accrediting agencies is like, yeah, you basically we need to get on this. So it's going to be I guess a renewal project for us in the coming school year, and then rolling that out for us.
And I mean. And as you can see with these, they're written very generally. That's why you'd really need to have the learning outcomes there, so that employers or whoever it is could contextualize them, because they're very general, intentionally, right?
Sure. And do you have you conducted mapping exercises? So number 7 there, demonstrate ethical professional behavior. Is that mapped to certain courses where that vocational ability is taught or practiced or ultimately evaluated or some such thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's also in the standards. It's part of the provincial standards, so it's mapped that way and it's mapped the other way.
We try, like I was never the curriculum consultant, and I know Lana's brand new to this program too. So every time we now go up for like program review, we do the mapping to the accreditation and program outcomes for every program. So depending on when this one went through, I'm not sure if it's in, but Tina says it has been done.
Well,
so
it was done, but 5 years ago. So I don't know if the provincial standards had changed in there, because I'm new to this program too.
Apparently they haven't.
Oh, okay.
I've been trying to find out, and apparently neither has changed. So this program and the provincial standards were aligned by the province. However many years ago that was, I don't know.
provincial
And neither has changed.
Really generic. So with DEIs, I pulled them and they're really written generically. But so the federal government standards are lovely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which
I have those on my computer too.
Which ones are lovely?
Federal government.
Federal government.
Oh, federal.
The 2016 standards. They had a national qualification scoping document for this occupation, and they're beautifully done. You guys would love them because it's all competency based, right? You can see every step and skill.
Yeah. Would you fire off a link to that if you have it?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, me too, Shelley. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Please. Interesting to see how we match.
Actually, they have a standard. They have a standards document for a program that Holland. I don't know if you guys have it, or maybe it's in your Con Ed, the managerial for early childhood or leadership in childhood. They have a standards document for that too. It's not there? Oh, okay.
Never heard of it.
I'll send you the links.
Dandy.
Wow.
I don't know what the next steps are. I'll just send you all the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let it ferment.
Do you want me to renew this meeting for the same time next week? Because we're running out of time, just to talk about next steps, or do you want to do it now? Because I need some time to think about this.
Everyone does.
I need to process. There's a lot of
anything I should ask Jennifer on Friday? She's hard to get a meeting with.
Jennifer Archer?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where to go.
She'll be a big part of next steps too.
Yeah, I'll send her my stuff too, so that way if anybody's talking to her, she knows what we discussed. That's a good idea.
Yeah, because she'll help us determine next steps, because a lot of this work will, I mean, Lana's definitely a big part of it, but there's also the instructional designer and
do you guys have an instructional designer?
Carolyn.
Are you talking NSCC?
It's Carolyn. Or it was Carolyn. I don't know.
It is Carolyn. Now we have on this project, to be determined whether Carolyn will be the one pulled for the PLAR project. She's the ECE cricket instructional designer.
Yeah.
So that should be determined by next week. So then we could have her as part of it. And the other thing I was thinking of, so our intention is to hire an ECE RPL program coordinator. So that would be the person who would be working with the students to help them pull all their documents into this process and help us as an ECE specialist to design this too.
Help with the employer side of things too.
It'll help with somebody that would be certainly an ECE, but also have some curriculum and teaching experience so that we can help. They'll kind of oversee the RPL process of this project.
Okay. And so for the Holland College crowd, I guess we'll talk and we'll think about using some of Patrick's time and expertise potentially on our side. We have an ID who's attached to our Future Skills project. And I think he would have some time, so we'll think about that. So I think I would like to think that we could meet again in a week's time for another hour. It would give Melissa, Jennifer, Maria, and I a time to think and see what we would like to do as next steps, and maybe we could come back together and
I did notice that a week from today is the 30th of June, so it's the day before a holiday. Is that a problem? I don't mind. I mean, I'm here.
That's not a problem.
That's the day your daughter arrives.
Oh yeah,
Grandbabies come in.
She'll be in quarantine.
Oh, she'll be with me then.
Yeah, she'll be in quarantine. She flies in at 12:15, which is at midnight, and then she's in quarantine till her test results come back. But that's so I won't be able to see them that day anyway. So that would be great. So I'll reschedule this. If you forwarded the meeting to, I can add everybody anyway.
Thank you.
And I'm sending a link to the standards. I'll put a link to the video because I was the one that hit record. The presentation, and look in my notes. That anything that I said is in the notes section on the slides.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
Not word for word, and I'll send the 2 Excel sheets.
Okay.
One says Holland College and one, and I've also, only one rubric is there. I put all the courses along the bottom, so you'll think, oh my God, yeah, there's nothing on those pages. It's just the blue one that has the one rubric, one for each institution.
And Mary Lou, if you find that a week is not enough, just let me know and I'll move it a little bit, because this is going to be a lot to process. I can't wait to think a little bit deeper on this.
Yes, I will let you know. We'll
I'll schedule it for now, so it's in our calendars, and then we'll go from there.
Grand.
Now I can't stop thinking about program level outcomes, but I won't do anything until, because it's too much work if you bust my bubble.
Yeah, well, we don't have them. I mean, we'll probably we have to get them, but
Anna and I can facilitate the development of them.
Yeah.
Jennifer, okay, sounds good.
There you go.
We just practiced all spring on doing those on workshops.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Okay, beautiful. It's fun to have these chats.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Shelley. Really appreciate this. That was a lot of work, but it was fascinating.
Shelley, that's tremendous. Thank you.
Really.
That's why I don't get invited to parties, because this stuff is what excites me.
We're glad you're at this party. This is great.
Exactly.
All right. Well, have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.